When it comes to being a good photographer or videographer, you have to have a certain array of tools in your bag. All of these tools play a really important part, but there's one of them that is absolutely crucial to everything that is done when using a camera, whether it's photos or videos. If you look at the array of stuff that I've got dotted around me, all of these are fantastic tools. They are some of the best tools that are available out there. They will allow you to do a huge variety of creative things, from drone photography or videography to tether, high resolution images directly into a computer on a portrait shoot, to be able to recreate really smooth, steady images via using a gimbal for videography or cinematography. All of these play a crucial role in creating absolutely sterling or superb content. But there's one asset that is the most vital to every creative that picks up a camera, and it's the tool that's not often spoken about on YouTube. I tend to find on YouTube most of the videos are about the latest camera or drone or the latest bit of tech or something along those lines, and all of those things are great, as I've said, but they will not make you a better creative. And the manufacturers 9 times out of 10 won't tell this to you, because of course they want you to buy the next release of camera or the next release of hardware, in the belief that doing that will make you a better creative. All of these tools fundamentally rely on one factor. This one factor is the usage of light. And the principle I try to use is, if you can get it right before it goes into the camera, you take the stress off the system. You allow the camera to perform at its absolute maximum. Whereas if you're really pushing a camera, increasing its ISO or increasing its shutter speed, doing all these sort of things, like pushing it to its absolute limits, because it is mechanical and because it is technological, it will reach a threshold, it will reach its limit. Whereas with light, there is no limit to how you can or can't use light. And that's the tool that I want to talk about today, because as I said before, in the YouTube environment, a lot of the creators will always be talking about the latest camera. Like, it seems like every week there's a new camera that's being launched, and I can't blame the manufacturers for doing this. This is commercialization. This is how businesses operate. The products that they are releasing do solve genuine problems, so there will be a usage for them. It's not like they're creating products that are not going to be used. Every new update of technology is always going to have a new solution that allows us to achieve something more. But what we can do with light is we can achieve so much outside of the camera before we put it in. There's a super famous meme that says, we'll fix it in post. Any good gaffer, DOP, any good cinematographer will know you get it right before it goes into camera. And that for me is the most important tool when it comes to being a creative. Because whether you're shooting stills or you're shooting video, you have to be able to harness light, because all of the technology you have in your hand will reach its limitation. So for an example, in this setup here, I have got a 1, 2, 3, 4, I've got a 4-point light setup that's able to create this texture and depth to the video that you're watching now. Whereas if I was to change some of those elements, you start to notice that that image will change. So for instance, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take away our edge lights. I've tube this side and I've got a mixed one this side. And what these will basically allow me to do is they help separate me from that dark background and also bring attention to the products that are on the edge of the table. If I was to switch these off, that's 1. That's 2, you can see that the image starts to become a lot flatter, it starts to lose its depth. And that's one of the problems that technology has, is, you're always trying to trick the mind that there is depth within the image or the video that your audience is watching or consuming. 9 times out of 10, the aperture is used. That's the solution. If you can increase the aperture to maybe 1.8, 1.4, 2.8, somewhere along those lines, you create this defocused and, you create this defocused background, and your subject becomes the highlight of that image. So that's using the technology, but there is a limitation to that. In the natural world, in terms of our ability to focus and not focus, we can all do that. We can all hone into something close to us and hone into something far away, and everything else becomes blurry, so we can pinpoint our targets. But also what happens in the real world is there's shadow. And as I move around within this scene, you start to see this shadow creates a sense of depth as I move out and into the light. And this is all done outside of the camera. And what I mean by that is, the camera I'm shooting on at the moment is the A7C, which is a very, it's a well-rated camera. It can do a lot of stuff. It has a lot of technology that allows us to create great content. But fundamentally, its ability to do that is based around its ability to capture light. If we take away the light, which I'm going to do now, you will start to notice we lose the whole image, and now I'm just being lit by one key light. So I'm going to switch that last light off, and this is how the camera performs on its own. You know, this is not great. This isn't what will captivate your audiences and make them want to stick around and consume more of it. So in terms of being a better creative, what is the most essential tool for all of us? It's our ability to control light to be able to create better images. And as I fire these all up now, you'll start to notice we start to build a scene. My key light lights me now. I'm going to have a kicker that pulls me out from this background and starts to highlight the objects around me on this table, which again are amazing pieces of technology, and they all serve a purpose. But without the uses of light, they're pretty useless. Throw on another kicker, and all of a sudden we've got that life and death. And then the last one for me is the overhead light, which I was using to shoot all the products. So I'm going to throw that up now. And there we go. We have built an entire scene using light. The camera, of course, hasn't changed its setting. To emphasize my point, the most essential tool for every creative is light. And what tends to happen in terms of the journey of the creative is the first thing they believe they need to get, well, actually, not believe, the first thing they do need to get is a camera. That's the starting point. So whether you want to do photography or you want to do videography, you'll buy a camera. And once you buy that camera, you'll go on this steep learning curve of understanding how the exposure triangle works and how you best use the camera to create the best possible image or video. And what will tend to happen is the camera you've bought will be a budget camera, so you'll have limitations in terms of what the camera and the lens system can do. 9 times out of 10, kit lenses will only allow you to go up to like 3.5 in terms of the aperture setting, which doesn't give you that much separation from the background. So you go on this journey and you're trying to utilize the camera to create the best possible content. And then what happens inevitably is you've got this camera, you then realize you need a better lens. So you then go and buy a better lens. And fundamentally, the lens is the conduit, the channel that allows you to carry this brilliant light into the capturing device, such as the camera or video camera. So you go on this journey and you buy yourself a better lens, and now you can shoot at 2.8 or 1.8 or 1.4, and all of a sudden your subject pulls out of that background and they're really sharp and everything else is blurry and it's buttery smooth and it's dreamy, it's great to look at. Then you take 1,000 pictures like this, or you take 1,000 videos like this, and you start to realize, well, where do I go from here? What do I do next? So then inevitably, the next part of most creative journeys is start to try and understand lighting. So you've gone and bought the camera, you've harnessed the ability of that, you've upgraded your equipment with a better lens, and now you're like, okay, how do I add more depth, more texture, more life to what I'm trying to create? And inevitably, you then move to light. Whether it's strobe or continuous, you will then move into the realms of using light. So you then get to this point where you're training yourself how to use light. And what you'd start to realize is, actually, when I have light that's available, I can change the settings on the camera to take the strain off the system. And then you realize, actually, I can shoot at 3.5. So maybe my kit lens does have some use for me, as opposed to shooting at 1.4. Because when there's available light, shooting at 1.4 becomes extremely difficult because there's an abundance of light. A lot of the time, too much light. So then you end up going on this backwards journey. You spend all this time trying to refine your equipment to the point where you can shoot at 1.2 or 1.4, whatever it is, and then you start to realize that actually in a lot of situations shooting at 1.4 is just not practical. So you want to go be shooting up at like f7 or somewhere along those lines, and you realize, oh god, if only I just learned about the light in the beginning, I would have been able to make better use of the kit products that I bought in the beginning of my journey. And you know, that's for me the idea of this video is, if you are a creative in the early stages of your career and you're on YouTube constantly and you're watching all these big creators and all they're doing all the time is leading you down a garden path or fooling you to believe that the answer to becoming a better creative is buying the latest camera or buying the latest drone or having the latest iPad or the latest gimbal, those will not make your content better. They will make your content better once you've reached a point of fully being able to understand them all. what will distinctively change your content forever is the ability to use light. In the realms of top-end movie production for feature films and things like that, you know, if you watch these films, these guys are very rarely just turning up with a camera and shooting from the camera. They will have these whole intricate teams built around the usage and control of light to be able to make those scenes come to life. And whilst we're along the lines of talking about harnessing and controlling light, I will give you a breakdown of this setup. So behind me, I have bed sheets pinned to the wall, which gives me this black background. I like shooting against black. I think it's a great way to make the subject stand out. When you're using light on a fabric, such as a bed sheet pinned to a wall, you start to pick up the texture of that. So you have to be able to control the light. So what I've done is all of these light sources around me, they're all controlled. So rather than having just this bare source of light that spills everywhere and makes everything flat and takes away the texture that it could potentially have, I control all of these and create layers with the light. So in terms of the layers that I would say I have is I've probably got 3 layers, you could say 2 layers of lighting. So I'll take you through the back layers through to the front layers. So in terms of lighting a space, it's always worth starting from the back and working your way towards the camera, as opposed to starting from the camera and working your way back. And once you've done that, the reason being is once this is set, you can move forward, you get a little bit closer to the camera. 9 times out of 10, this is going to be your ambience, or this is going to be like the storytelling, the location part of what you're trying to create. You light that behind the subject, then you look at the subject, and then you look at the beyond the subject or closer to the camera, and then you add these layers. So I'll start at the back of the room. What I basically have is these 2 lights set either side of me, and they create this channel, this zone here. So I will call this maybe zone 1. That's lighting this space. So everything that falls into this little line is what's being lit by these 2 lights here. They have got a grid. This has got a grid this side. This has got barn doors this side. And what they allow me to do is they take away the spill from the backdrop. So for instance, if I was to open this barn door out, open this barn door out as such, what you'll start to notice is that light spills beyond me. And I'm going to just turn this one, so you'll see the light spills beyond me, starts to fall on the backdrop. It's not what I want. I want the light to be focused into this channel here. And that's what the grids and the barn doors do. So if you're watching YouTube videos and you keep noticing these grids or these egg crates wrapped around lights, and you think to yourself, what the hell do they do? This is the purpose of that. And I personally think the majority of lights that you use should be controlled. And if they're not controlled, there should be a purpose for them not being controlled, such as trying to create a really soft, flattering light in glamour. So that's this first zone. Then we move into this second zone. The second zone, I would say, is this light above me. So this is a Forza 60, and it's got a Fresnel, and it's creating this harsh overhead beam. So it's almost like a interrogation style. So if I was to switch off some of these lights now, I'll show you what I mean by an interrogation style. So I'll switch off my key, which is this one here. I'll switch off this edge light, which is this one here. I'll switch off this edge light, which is that one there, and then all I've got left is this one above my head. And this is very much like if you was interviewing a criminal in a police station, or actually a great scene. So Batman, The Dark Knight, or I think it's The Dark Knight with the Joker, and they're in the police cell and they lean away and then they lean into the light. That's possible because this light is only lighting this space here, or this zone. It's not being influenced by this light over here or this light over here. It's just controlling this space here. So that's zone 2. And then outside of that is where I've placed my key light. So my key light on this remote control, which is the WSRC-C1, and it controls all my nanlight fixtures. What this allows me to do is then remotely switch on my key. So my key turns on, and you can see that there's a subtle difference. And again, we try to set them up so this doesn't impact what's going on here. But of course, this light is spilling through this zone, so there is going to be a little bit of interference. So in terms of stopping that interference, what the measure I've taken to stop that is increasing the power of this above my head. So the beam that's coming down from here isn't interrupted by the softer light that's coming through from here. And that gives me the ability to light me using this, light the table space using here. So if I pull out of this zone again, you can see that they're not interacting with each other as such. And then they're my zones basically. So that's the light setup I've used for creating this scene. And if you take those all away, like I have done previously, This is what the camera is capable of doing on its own in these conditions. I could switch the light on in the room and show you what that looks like. There we go. So I switched the light on in the room. This is what this looks like. The only thing I can do in this scenario to improve this scene is, because I'm already shooting at f2.8, which is as far as my camera will possibly go. My shutter speed is 60th of a second, and my ISO is 320. The only thing I can do to improve this scene based on the capabilities of my camera and my lens is increase the ISO. But increasing the ISO increases the whole frame, increases everything you're seeing. So then you'll just get this flat image. And I'm going to show you that now. So we go up in ISO, I'm going to pump it up. We're going to go 2,500. So I've now jacked the ISO up to 2,500, and that takes the capabilities of the camera as far as I'm willing to take it, really. And again, that just shows that all technology, all of this stuff here, all of this stuff that we spend so much money on in the pursuit of becoming a better creative, it all has its limitations. So my advice to you as a creative, regardless of how far you are in your career, if you haven't already started the pursuit, I'm going to stop this. I physically can't continue filming in such poor quality. So let's get this back set. I'm sorry, I couldn't bring myself continue record and watch that subpar quality. So where was I going? The point of this video is my advice to you, regardless of what stage you're at in your creative career pursuit, whether it's stills, whether it's motion or photography, videography, they're the same things, they're just different terminologies. Wherever you are, whether you're at the beginning or you're at the end, my advice to you is understand how to use light. Once you understand how to use light, your content will improve drastically. I hope you've enjoyed the video. A little bit of a disclaimer. I'm not discrediting any major brand in the photographic or video space at all. As I said earlier, all of these tools serve a purpose at specific points in your career, and they all solve specific problems. They combine together to create some of the greatest content and captivating content that we all get the pleasure of enjoying. What I'm saying is, fundamentally, one of the key things is that we can all change, regardless of budget, regardless of knowledge, all that sort of stuff. We can all learn how to utilize light, and the learning curve of utilizing light will equip you better as a creative in your career. So hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you've got any comments, please do pop them down below. If you've enjoyed the channel, hit the subscribe button. And until next time, guys, stay safe, keep creating great content, and I will see you all very soon. Take care.